I'm going to put this thing after I get it hooked up. Alright, so in this process here, there's a junction box comes up. That's a 10 wire there that comes up from the basement on a 30 amp breaker, and then you get that lead that comes from the stove top. And underneath you can see there's where it comes through over there, because the next step then is going to be to take this out. The rest of this glass seems like it's stuck pretty well, so I'm hoping I can just take it out in one piece here. So not sure exactly why I did this. I'm guessing based on knowing how this thing works, this was cut kind of close when this was put in. Every time it got hot, you would see this whole thing lift up because the heat would expand the burner base here, and I'm assuming that this time it couldn't come up. It must have been stuck down or something, and then it shattered the glass. I don't know. You can see here there's obviously some issue going on because this burner didn't work anymore. So I knew it was time, and I think I had a video of this up as well, that I had issues with it, that we were just going to use the other 3 burners. Now we're to a point where I guess we have to get it fixed, or we could probably just use it. It probably still works, it just doesn't have glass. So you can tell here the gasket on the thing wasn't doing a very good job. The stuff was getting underneath. So I'll have to get that cleaned up as well. Alright, so it's been a few days, got it cleaned up. Obviously there was some leakage there. So I went and ordered the cheapest stovetop cooktop I could find. So it's going to be porcelain, it should be black, and then it's got coil burners on it. The reason for that is the new ones, all the flat tops don't have the burners like we had, and if we use our cast iron or any type of I don't know if it's any type, but certain kinds of metal pots and pans, it could scratch that top, and I'm like, I'm not going to spend $700 to $1,000 on a flat top and then have it all scratched up, so I'm just going to go with the cheap one. And if those coil burners go out, I can get those at Menards, so that's easy enough. So this is what we've been using otherwise. I've been using this to make breakfast, which I really don't like the non-stick, but it's better than nothing. So I'll show you the install on that. The brand that I ordered is a Whirlpool. I want to say it was like, I don't know, 250 bucks or something like that. Pretty cheap. I think the cheapest cooktop you can find. Okay, so what I did with the cooktop here is I took the whip off, which is like the electrical connection that comes from the stove, or from the cooktop, I guess, and I always call it a stove. Anyway, what I found out was a couple things. One, that whip that I thought was something you had to buy aftermarket was actually, must have came with this cooktop, because this was the connector for the hot, and then the ground was just, there was a ground screw. So that whip actually had this connection on it, so it must have came with the actual cooktop, which I don't think the new one does. I don't know, we'll see if it ever arrives. It's been a while. What else about this? Oh, so this cooktop, I want to say, is 30 years old. Maybe it's 25. It's something like that. I looked it up once before. But I thought, man, this thing did pretty good. Like, we didn't have any issues with it, and for being that old, it must be built pretty well. But what happened when I started to take it apart, I took all the screws out the side here to get access to it. These look like the correct screw that it should came with. This Phillips that has kind of that self-tapping type of tapered screw to it, or sheet metal screw I should call it. This was also in there. This is like a, I don't know, it looks almost like a wood screw. What else? There was a different one. This here, that was also in there. So that leads me to believe at some point then that this was taken apart to either replace one of these burner pads or something, because somebody must have lost the screws, because the majority of them are this, and then just randomly these screws were put in. So I'm assuming at some point somebody must have fixed or replaced, and maybe that's why this burner's got this different thing. Oops, this different part. I don't know if that's the case though. So yeah, so that's where I'm at with this. The other thing to note is that this was on a 30 amp breaker, and it had 10 wire running from the box, from the breaker box up to a junction box, which is good. So I assumed then that the whip that comes from this that goes to that junction box would have also been 10 wire. No, that was 12 wire. 12, I think it was AWG, which is like braided wire, I guess. So yeah, it was braided 12 gauge wire, which that's not okay on a 30 amp circuit. So, and I thought the new stove said that it needs a 40 amp 8 gauge. It's not going to get that. It's going to be a 10 gauge, which is already run, and then I'm going to find a 10 gauge whip that I run from the junction box to the new cooktop. So we'll see once the new one arrives here how this is all going to work out. Alright, so it finally came, the cooktop. It was ordered June 13th, and I believe it arrived July 8th? I think so, July 7th or 8th. It was almost an entire month for this thing, the special order, to come in. And when I always think special order, I always think like top of the line. This was actually the bottom of the barrel in the way of cooktops or stove tops, whatever you want to call these drop-in units. So here it is, not installed, because obviously we got to do some trimming here. So this is what it looks like. And like I said, this is probably the most basic unit. It's a Whirlpool. It does come with the whip, so like the metal flexible conduit or whatever comes with that, so that's good. And then I noticed this. It says that it is designed, engineered, and assembled in the United States. So that's good. Let's hope it's good at least. So the other one obviously was a little different. This one has these metal standouts here, and I think the point of that is so that you have like an air gap from the actual box part here, so it can't get hot against your countertop. So I got to do some trimming here. I got the jigsaw to get out cut out the countertop. Hopefully I don't end up with any issues. The opening's pretty square. It's not perfect, but I think it'll work. And it looks like there's some we have some wiggle room on this too. So yeah, so I'm gonna grab a couple tools, a pencil, and get some marking, and then see if I can get this thing dropped in today, because it's probably been a month at this point since we've had a cooktop. Alright, so I got it kind of marked out. So on this side here, the inside of the tape should be the outside of like the flange of the actual cooktop. And then this is the side I want to take the material off to kind of keep it more this way, so we have more usable workspace over there. The only thing with that is I don't know how it's going to be more this way, so when you look at the cabinets it won't be square or centered, I guess. I don't know, but this kitchen's more about functionality than it is aesthetics. We use it every day. It's not a showpiece, I can tell you that. That should be obvious. And then this one here, the inside of the tape is what I got to cut out, so I got to take out this much material. And then the outside here should be the flange, because this tape is 1 inch. So, and then what I'm using is this here jigsaw with a finer tooth type blade. I'm hoping it doesn't ruin the countertop. It looks like that's what it was cut out with originally, so it should be okay.
I'm not going to do any video of me actually cutting it because that's boring. It really has no purpose. So I'm going to cut it and then I'll show you afterwards, and maybe I'll have it, see if I can get it to sit in there or have it set in. So, alright, so I got it in. Fits pretty good. Let's see across the front here, it looks alright. You probably can't see with the white and the black, camera won't pick that up. It's just this corner here. It feels like there's a little, I don't know, that it's up. I don't know, maybe that's just the way it is. It's probably the countertop though, because I checked underneath and looking up, there's plenty of space around the box here. You can see where it's cut. Oh, maybe you can't. There you can. You can see where that tab sticks out like that to keep that space. I think that's like a 1/2 inch gap there away from the combustibles or whatever. I'm sure that's something. There's one right above us too, right there. So what I did think about doing is just cutting out where those tabs are so that the countertop was closer to the box, but that's probably not a good idea. So, and then this is the whip that comes with it. This is 8 gauge wire. Obviously I'm not pulling 8, I'm leaving the 10 that's in there on the 30 amps. So I would think the only time that would trip is if we had all the burners on. Otherwise this should work just fine. I can't imagine there being an issue with that. It says though it should be on 8 gauge wire with 40 amps, so as long as it's on 10 with 30 it should be fine. And then this previous hole that somebody did a hack job on, that's where it goes through. So I'll probably pull this out yet, pull this yellow painter's tape off. I don't know, it doesn't look too bad, it looks like it should work. I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's gonna move. There is a way to pull the burners out and this black part comes off, and then you're supposed to be able to run screws through. They came with 4 screws that you run through your countertop to keep it from moving or sliding, but I mean it doesn't move, and I can't imagine, it's not like it's gonna pop out because the thing weighs about 40 pounds. So once I get to the point of wiring it up, I'll bring it back in here again. Let you watch what I'm doing. Okay, so we're to the point now doing the wiring. So here's the top where it comes through where that ungodly hole is. And then there's a little notch out of the shelf, and it comes in. There's some sort of like black, I want to call it tape. It's not electrical tape, something else. It's to keep the wires, I'm assuming, from rubbing. And then I'm just reusing this metal fitting here, which should slide into this box. And I just got 3 wires coming up, 3 wires connect. It's not a 4-wire or anything like that. We got 2 hots, the red and black, and then the ground. So we'll get that hooked up. I'm pretty sure this is in code. I don't think you can do that. I'm pretty sure this should probably be in that like armored cable or whatever, or you should have armored cable down to the basement. But that's how they did it here, and I think this was after the fact. I don't know what it originally had, but this cooktop was probably put in early 90s, I would say, so I don't know what they had before. I don't see any holes, so I don't think it was gas, so I don't know what they had. So this obviously isn't going to be done. Those wire nuts are not the right size, and I don't have the right size. So I just kind of put them in there for now. I'm not even going to put this cover on. I'm actually going to run to the store and pick up some wire nuts, but I want to test it out to make sure that it works. Now they got it in, so I'm going to go downstairs, turn the breaker on, and then we'll test it, make sure that it works. Okay, so this breaker here, this 30 is for that range top, so I'm going to turn that on. Didn't pop, that's good. And like I said, that's on a 10 wire, and that the other one, the wire actually coming out of the stove top was a 12 gauge wire, and then it went into that junction box and it was 10 gauge down to here. So I really wonder if this should have been on 30, if that should have been on 20. But this one says it should be on 40. It's going to be on 30. The fuse is the right size for the wire, so that way we should be fine. Like I said, if it ends up popping the breaker more than once here, I can always upgrade to 8 gauge wire. Alright, so this is it. I got it all in, and here is the test. And light comes on. So there you go. And it's getting warm. You have to take my word for it, it is though. So what I kind of want to do is turn these all on high just to see if I actually do trip that breaker. I don't know if that's a good idea, but I don't know, it's something I just really want to try, but we'll see. Alright, so I got all the burners on against my wife's better judgment. I'm going to do it anyway. So this one I had on first, and it's getting red. I'll tell you this, like, this is where my hand is at. It really is hot. Like, you can feel the heat coming off of this thing, so that's impressive. Like, our other one didn't heat like that anymore. There you go, now all the burners are starting to turn. So this scenario, though, I can't envision ever being possible where we'd be using every burner on the highest setting possible. Like, that seems absolutely, I don't know, ridiculous. So I'm going to turn it off. It didn't obviously pop the breaker yet. We're getting to a point where it's going to probably be at its highest setting. And the fact that it's about 90 degrees outside and we're running the air conditioning, I probably could have picked a better day for this. So there you go. That's what it looks like. That is your Whirlpool cooktop install after about 30 days without a cooktop.